Hello, hello! Käykö tämmönen tyyppi YouTuberista? Is this a person who can be a YouTuber? I am not sure about that. But anyway, I thought that since YouTube is full with interesting content, of which almost none is about artists' lives, at least dance artists' lives, or I'm just a really bad YouTube search engine user, I thought maybe someone would like to get a sort of insight on what is it to be a dance artist. So let's see what happens, if anyone is interested or not. And on the meanwhile, maybe I get some things articulated that might also help me in terms of, describing my work. And also I hope that maybe this kind of video logging might be a tool for me to use it as a sort of body double. For those of you who know anything about neurodivergent issues, specifically ADHD issues, you might know that for some people on this earth, and I'm not saying I have ADHD because I don't have the diagnosis and because I'm a female-bodied person, in Finland it is terribly difficult to get that sorted, so it's on pause. Been since maybe 1.5 years now, and maybe will stay that way for some years. But regardless, this double body thing helps me a lot. So what it is, it's basically that when you're all by yourself, like now, you end up doing stupid shit like starting a YouTube channel instead of doing what you're supposed to be doing. But if you have a double body person, so just another body in the space, maybe just doing their thing, you typically can focus better. So, for example, I don't have a good thing to put this phone on, so I'm always like frustrated with how to position the phone. This is the wrong camera. This is the worst, not so good camera. So what was I saying? I was here. I have to go here for a moment and get my idea back. Focus, easy to focus, double body. So yes, because this week is like really important application week. The Grand Association founder named Kone, which is this Kone factory, there is this Kone Foundation, which is founded by Kone the factory, I think. And basically the idea, I think, is that money that the Kone elevators and maybe the other stuff as well, the money that comes in, the organization has wanted to support art and sciences. Bravo! So they have decided to share their private money, not public money, not your tax money, dear people. And actually, a lot of art funding is private. And this is something that I think the masses sometimes forget. Although it comes from a foundation, it might be still private money. Okay, anyway, so they make a lot of money and they want to put it to art and sciences, and they are one of the biggest foundations in Finland, and they are specifically wonderful because they have decided to, instead of giving each project a tiny bit of money, to give less projects a huge amount of money. Basically, they prefer funding the whole project, meaning anything from 50, maybe even 10, 20,000 to 200,000 or even more. I know that one scientist have gotten €1 million for their research project, which is great. So as a person navigating this funding instrument, wilderness or jungle or forest, us being in Finland, me being in Finland, or sea, difficult to focus. So it's so much better to make several applications for sure, but then to get the whole funding. Because then what often happens in the arts is, at least in Finland, and at least in dance, frame, baby, is that your project, to be done properly, professionally, would require, let's say, 60,000 euros. It's not even like a huge budget. Like, I think like bigger theater productions, they would just laugh for 60,000 probably. But anyway, for free dance scene, 60,000 euros is already like huge amount of money. And now I regret saying that, because I want to support this idea that dance doesn't need more money. We would just do different things if we actually could dream like freely and actually do the things. At least my dreams are quite humongous. So I would like to build like big things for the performance to take place in. But I'm not probably ever gonna be able to do that, because it's just impossible to get that kind of funding from anywhere. Maybe from Connect someday, maybe. So what often happens is that you get tiny part of that. The typical sum from cities to smaller foundations is from 7,000 to, let's say, 15,000, somewhere between that. And the most common is below 10,000. And with that, if it's like, since you're not paying salaries, because it's fund, what's the word? I don't know the word, but like from the fund. So it's taxed differently. So if you get like personal grant for a whole year, of course, then you have to pay like different kind of, then you pay taxes for the entire sum and so on. But since usually artists get like from single performer, for example, from 500 to 5,000 per project as money from some fund, it's not usually big enough sum to be taxed, which is, before you think that, okay, that's just so unfair, it doesn't, what happens then is also that it doesn't create a retirement money for you as it would if it would be big enough sum to be taxed. So it's not only good thing. And personally, I would always prefer to get salary, because then you can even have some kind of dream of some kind of retirement at some point, and not just suicide. Sorry, I'm a bit but actually I'm sipping it, let's not go there. So yeah, diggy 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 funding 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 fuck so then yes, when you get the small sum of, let's say, 8,000 euros, you of course then want to do something with it. You want to start the project or continue with the project. But it's not guaranteed that you will get the end result out there unless you're prepared to do it for free. And as a choreographer, I'm starting to rethink this, but like in general, if I have a project, I can't ask for people to do it for free, since I, as an artist, as a choreographer, I do have like quite clear like vision, and I want to actually create those ideas, bring them into life, and that means that I'm not always, I sometimes do, but I'm not always working collectively. And then the relationship for each artist and with the piece might be a bit different than mine. So for them it might be a bit more about getting work, which is, I must say, it's not my preference. I would always want to work with artists who actually personally want to work with that specific project, or with me as a specific person, as their colleague, because that creates such a different atmosphere and ethos, regardless of how the money things go. But anyway, the case often is that it might be so that my colleagues in the working group might have a bit different relation to the work than myself, and I'm often the person trying to get the funding and trying to, like, I'm basically the producer of the work. So so then what do you do if you end up getting like 8,000 and you maybe can do like first residency, like start the work, but then you get nothing? So then you end up like starting things and not, it's just so frustrating as an artist to be in this situation. And then because you don't get any feedback from the founders, because there's like so many applications, so you don't get that data of maybe why this wasn't accepted. Is it because these specific people make the decision doesn't like my art, or was the text unclear, and if it was, in which way? And of course, when you apply for, let's say, a clerk work somewhere or whatever, you might not get that feedback either. But I'm often thinking that because there is this data, someone has read this application and someone has thought something about it. And most likely that person has made some kind of notes. And even if they wouldn't have done that, they probably easily could just put a couple of words down, like even like 3 words of association. What comes to mind? What is key problem? Why not? Why maybe? Would clarify so much and help the art scene like hugely, I think, in my opinion. Because what happens as an artist's perspective, from artist's perspective, is that after, let's say, 5 applications or 10 applications, which got a no from the funders, you start to think, maybe there is something wrong with my application. Or, no, not or even, it's and. What if there is something wrong with the project? And as time goes further, you sort of want, because you have already probably invested a lot of time in articulating the project, creating the vision, creating the plan to execute the project, and you maybe have even gotten some first grant that you have used, and you have done something. You have invested a lot of yourself, of your time, of your energy, this process of applying money and on this project. So then you kind of don't want to give up because of this investment. So you start to sort of wiggle with it, like, okay, maybe we can edit this text to this direction. Maybe that's the reason why I didn't get any funding. And what if we think a bit more from this angle? Ooh, what a word. Angle. So maybe this kind of contextualization would make more sense. And then as time goes by, you might even start to think that, actually, maybe I want to do this kind of project that is kind of this project, but another project. And then you try to merge them just to maybe declutter your brain, or just genuinely got curious about this. And then the projects start to smush, like, and then it's really, really challenging, I think, as an artist to make the decisions of how to navigate that application process. So since this data already probably is somewhere in this universe, if we would gain even a tiniest bit of access to it, maybe it could be so that if you want to access it, you can access it. It wouldn't have to be like, everybody has to hear these 3 words that came to my mind as a faceless not founding, but a person behind the screen. So, because I know that many people don't want to hear it. Many people prefer anonymous processes and not getting feedback, or at least not getting this kind of data, this kind of raw data that is not sugar-coated. Some people need that, but I don't. I love data. I love to, because I think I then can process this, that I can, and especially if there would be like data from several places that I apply money from, or apply with the project to. So then you could actually start to paint a picture of how these other people position and understand this project. And then when you start to make these wiggle adjustments, it might be a bit more informed, and it would be more beneficial for the project, for your art making, and I think also for the people reading the applications at the end of the day, because then, I don't know, yeah, I'm really hoping something could be done to this. Yeah, okay. Yep. I really can't do this. Why does it always seem so easy? Or maybe they just then edit it. Interesting.